Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Lim, and I am the Director for District Implementation for FIRST Robotics Canada. And I'm joined with Paul Keenan, one of our first senior mentors, also with FIRST Robotics Canada. And today is our very first Ask the Experts webinar for the 2016-2017 season. And so if you joined us last year, you would know that these webinars are basically weekly webinars that are meant to reach out to the FIRST Robotics community and to provide some information for you to how to improve your team experience both on and off the field. Today's webinar has a little bit of a broader scope because we'll be talking about girls in STEM and maybe why FIRST Robotics is one of the best experiences for promoting girls in STEM, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math. And so the scope of this one is going to be more for the general public. Maybe you've never done robotics before and you're wondering what it's all about and why it's important and how it does affect the lives of girls by doing robotics. But these webinars are about 30 minutes in length, and what you're going to witness is a series of conversations. And there'll be conversations with some incredible people who I've met through the FIRST Robotics community. And in the past, I've had just incredible conversations with some very smart people on various topics. And by having conversations with these people, I've been able to really help my own team quite a bit by taking their advice and getting their ideas. And a part of these webinars is our attempt to share these conversations publicly with you guys as well so that you get a chance to witness them and hopefully can bring some of that information back to your own teams. And so these are the same people who I go to advice, the people who I deem as, I guess, experts in their fields when it comes to robotics. And on this chat, we've also got Paul Keenan with us, who will be moderating. And so if you're on the call and you have any questions at any point, please go ahead and put them into the chat. And Paul will do his best to try and get your questions answered as we go along. And so without further ado, I'd like to take a moment just to introduce a few of the guests that we have on our panel today. And today we have Hanna Zhang joining us, and she's an alumnus of FIRST Robotics Competition, FRC Team 4914 out of Victoria Park Collegiate. Hanna, great to have you with us. And Hanna, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay. Hi, thanks for the introduction. So I actually got my start in robotics from FLL in my middle school, and then luckily enough, when I got to high school, they just started 4914, and I got on that train, and it's just been an amazing experience, learning so much and having a lot of fun, and it's just brought me so many wonderful places where I've been able to grow and just gain more confidence. So I guess a bit about background. During the summer of my grade 11 and 12 years in high school, I worked as a high school engineering intern at Sunnybrook with the Focus Ultrasound Group. And it was an amazing experience seeing engineering applied in a field that I want to get into. And it's all thanks to FIRST. Like, FIRST gave me the confidence to do everything I like, just the confidence to just go for it and try it. And yeah, and right now I'm a first year engineering student at U of T, and I'm studying engineering science, if you know what that is.
Great to have you on board, Hanna. I'm pretty familiar with engineering science at U of T, largely regarded as one of the most challenging engineering programs to be able to get into. And so I think it goes to show your pedigree and that you really do need to know some of your engineering stuff to be able to attend a program like that. But thanks for thanks for being with us, Hanna. And as you mentioned, you started with FLL, which stands for First Lego League. And so that's for the younger group of students building Lego robots and competing with those. But thanks again, Hanna. And we have also Ms. Krysta Peralto with us, who is an alumnus of another FRC team, Team 3161. Krysta, glad to have you on board. And would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Krysta, and I'm from Team 3161, which is at Holy Trinity in Oakville. And I'm an alumni for about 3 years now, and I am currently at school for computer engineering. I just finished my second year, and I am on an internship for 16 months working at 3M Canada as an electrical engineering intern, and I wouldn't have gotten my interview or my job without my first experience.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Krysta. Once again, we're glad to have you on board as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Christine Bibic with us. And Christine is a mentor, not just any mentor, but the lead mentor for FRC Team 4476, the Waffles out of Kingston, Ontario. Christine, would you be able to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been involved with FIRST for over 10 years now. I think it's 11 actually, and started off in FIRST LEGO League, and from there I moved into FIRST LEGO League Junior, and then expanded upward to the FIRST Robotics competition team. I have 5 kids, and all of them have been involved in FIRST, and 3 of them are girls, so I've really enjoyed watching the impact that the program has had on them in particular, because it certainly had a life-changing effect, and certainly has given them a direction that I know for a fact they wouldn't have been exposed to if they hadn't been involved with FIRST.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Christine. Glad to have you on board, especially to be able to give us that parent perspective, which I think is going to be really important, which leads me into my first question, which comes in the form of a little bit of a confession. And so for the 3 guests that we have on, I think you guys do know me a little bit personally. You know that I don't have any kids currently, but they're in the not too distant future. But my confession is that I'm actually a little bit terrified of having kids. In specific, I'm actually a little bit scared of having a daughter, particularly because in this day and age, I think our society and our culture presents a pretty challenging environment to be able to raise a daughter. And one of the things I would love for my future daughter to have is maybe the same appreciation of science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM as we call it, as maybe I did or I do. Maybe that's a little extreme because I take it a little bit far. But Christine, I guess my first question really goes to you, where maybe as a parent, if you ran into someone like me who maybe has daughters in the future, and if I really wanted to make sure my daughter grew up with a positive impression of STEM, because I don't think if you just kind of let things go, they'll necessarily have a positive impression of STEM. But did you find that it was really important to try and get your daughters specifically into a STEM activity like robotics?
I think it's definitely had a big impact, and in hindsight, I guess looking back, giving advice to somebody like yourself, I'd say for sure make sure to expose them to it in a positive way and a fun way, and I think FIRST speaks well to that because it's fun and you can learn a lot, and certainly it's a broad spectrum of skills that you're sort of learning and throughout the process. So I think that's a big part of it, because at least for my own girls, they weren't as naturally drawn towards the STEM related activities as they were maybe the arts and other sort of avenues. They seemed a little less enticed to follow that direction on their own, so they required a little bit more exposure, I guess, just to give them that confidence.
And I think you mentioned in the past that how your eldest daughter got involved was you had to press her into it a little bit, and it was mostly by, I guess, by association because of your eldest, who's a
Right.
son.
Right.
He really wanted to do it, and sort of by necessity, you forced your eldest daughter into it when the time came.
Yeah, so when we started our first LEGO League team, it was for my son primarily because I wanted something to really engage him and get him off the video games and get his brain more into things. So I was looking for an activity that I thought would appeal to him, and knowing the time commitment that was involved, and because they're a year and a little bit apart, I sort of said to her, you got to give this a try because we're going to do it. She was reluctant, but anybody that's met her today and has seen sort of how far she's come from somebody who didn't think programming was her thing and who really didn't know too much about mechanical building or anything, and how now she's off at university studying engineering, how FIRST has played the primary role in making that path available to her.
So I think that's a question I want to pose to both Hanna and Krysta as well, because I wonder if their experiences were similar, where with Christine's eldest daughter, her interests lay elsewhere before she started this whole robotics thing and kind of needed to be nudged into it a little bit. And I guess that's what I'm talking about in terms of our society and culture. When you're younger and female, we don't necessarily champion STEM as one of the things that girls like to do or even are supposed to do. Hanna, I'll ask you, like when you first got involved with the robotics, was it something that you wanted to do, or did someone have to kind of convince you to do it at first?
Well, starting with FLL, that was more my decision, where I was just like, oh my god, this looks like so much fun. And it ended up being a lot more fun than I thought it was. But I mean, going into high school, it's an interesting point that you bring, because even though I really liked being on the FRC team, I always thought, well, oh, I'm not that good of a coder, or well, maybe I'm not as mechanically inclined. Like, I think it's kind of something that you put in your mind yourself, and also social pressure. So then there was kind of that hesitation for me. But then when I got into when I got into grade 11, and after I was on the team for a year, I gained so much confidence, and I learned so much, and then I just kept going from there, right? And I think that's what I'm really thankful for my first experience.
Awesome. And Krysta, how about for you, for your first robotics experience? Was it something you kind of dove into willingly? You knew you wanted to do this absolutely, or were you kind of going in a different direction and you needed to have been convinced sort of to try this whole robotics thing? What was your story with your first robotics, I guess, experience?
So what happened to me was in the 8th grade, you have to decide where you're going for high school. And I was deciding between 3 different schools, and one of them was a school for the arts. Specifically, I was planning to study vocals. And one day, the robotics team at my high school, the one I chose, Team 3161 came, and they told me what they did. They said, we went to the World Championships this year. This is what the game was. This was really cool. They showed their robot. They didn't answer any of my questions. They didn't give me a button. They didn't even look at me. But I knew that I wanted to join that robotics team, and I immediately said to my teacher, when they asked me for if I wanted a recommendation for the school, I said, no, I don't want a recommendation. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to study math and science.
So that's a big change of heart there for you, Krysta. And even having said that, actually, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, because for a lot of the people on the call or on the webinar who maybe don't have a full understanding for what it is that you guys have done by being a part of these robotics programs, you guys have mentioned FLL, which is the FIRST Lego League, which are smaller sort of handheld-sized robots made out of Lego parts. But all of you have moved on to the next step of the robotics program, which is the FIRST Robotics Competition, FRC. And these are like the big robots. They're like 140 pounds. Some of them get up to 6 feet tall. It's a full contact sport, and that's literally what they play. You build a robot in only 6 weeks, and that robot goes out and it plays a sport. These robotic games are usually based on something like basketball or ultimate frisbee or European handball, and then you compete against other schools. And the impact and the knowledge that you gain from that is just unbelievable, and we're not even talking about the technical skills involved. But Krysta, this is one that I want to delve in maybe with you just a little bit more, because obviously, you're doing your internship at 3M, you're in an amazing engineering program in university, but this program had an even bigger impact for you, I think, from even a personal level. Is that something that you mind just telling us a little bit about? Because I think you're one of those people who I've bumped into where you can literally say robotics changed your life. Without it, you'd be a very, very different person. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Krysta? Because I think you have an amazing story.
Yeah, for sure. So going through high school, the first thing I did was join my robotics team. So immediately that was where I made friends, and that's what I wanted to get into. And in grade 10, I decided I was going into engineering. Specifically, I decided I wanted to try and get into mechatronics at Waterloo. We all know I didn't get there, but it's okay. That's another story for another time. Anyway, so in grade 10, I decided I wanted to go into engineering. In grade 11, I had the unfortunate situation where my parents had split up and they decided to both move away. And I decided that I didn't want to move away. I said, no, I found this thing I really, really like, and I think it's going to be more beneficial to me to stay here and do this thing I like and and potentially go to a Canadian university for something I'm really passionate about. And I went through a lot, and over that year I fell into a depression. I developed an anxiety disorder, but I kept doing robotics because it was something that kept me going every day. It was something I was really excited to do. And by the time I graduated, I was so, so proud of myself and everything that I had done, that robotics had literally saved my life, and I would not be here if I hadn't had the opportunity to do FIRST while I was in high school.
I mean, that's a story that I can't even begin to imagine, like to have the strength and the mental fortitude to go through a situation like that, living on your own, and the thing that you were passionate about. Just to clarify, that thing that you found that you wanted to stay for, that was robotics, right?
That was robotics. There is no doubt. It was. I used to play soccer. I used to play volleyball. I used to run track, and robotics was the kicker. Like nothing else compared.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Krysta. You know, it's just one of the most impactful stories that I've come across, I guess, in my time doing FRC, and I'm really happy that you're able to share that with us. Which kind of brings me to my next topic, which is a little bit, you know, a little bit off kilter, but I'm hoping to get some of your opinions on something that maybe I should give a little bit of a trigger warning about. But some of you might be familiar with computer engineer Barbie. And so all of you are familiar with Barbie, I guess, again, one of our cultural, societal icons for femininity, I suppose. And what Mattel did a few years ago was, in their series of Barbie books, they released one called Computer Engineer Barbie, and it was meant to promote STEM to girls by making this book that featured Barbie, and it would show her sort of becoming a computer engineer and hopefully, you know, promoting girls to maybe pursue this as a little bit of a career. Unfortunately, they got a little bit too carried away with just the whole Barbie side of it, and some of the message, I think, got lost in translation here. And so I just pulled up an article from the Daily Dot regarding this book, and I'll just show one of the panels here just to give you a little bit of an explanation as to why there were issues with this particular book. And so one panel here, Barbie has done a sketch for her video game concept that she wants to make, and her sister Skipper says, "Oh yeah, your robot puppy is so sweet. Can I play your game?" And Barbie responds, "I'm only creating the design ideas," Barbie says, laughing. "I'll need Steven's and Brian's help to turn it into a real game." And so I think if you read between the lines there, you don't even have to read between the lines. It's fairly obvious that, you know, this comment is a pretty huge shot. They're basically saying that Barbie doesn't have the capabilities to make this game herself. She needs to call in a favor from Steven and Brian in order to make this actually happen. And this book is kind of laced with backhanded, you know, I'd call them pretty derogatory commentary about women in STEM in particular. But a lot of people just kind of felt this was good. It was kind of acceptable. It's a typical Barbie story. And it was a good thing that we were doing this because at least girls got to see Barbie doing something that was STEM related. But I wanted to pick some of your brains. Like, how do you feel about Computer Engineer Barbie? Was it good? Does the end just justify the means? Are you cringing at this sort of as I speak? But Christine, maybe I'll pick your brain from a parent's perspective. Do you have any opinions about this?
It's too bad that it was Stephen and Brian and not Stephanie and Brian or Stephen and Brianna or somebody, just to show that it doesn't matter whether it, you know, they're male or female. It's too bad. What can I say? It's disappointing. I mean, I guess it's good in that it's showing Barbie doing something else other than I don't know, getting married or being a ballerina or whatever. But it is disappointing that it's not a little more. That's not giving Barbie a little more credit for what she's capable of.
Hanna, I'll swing this one over to you. Do you have any kind of reaction to this?
Well, it just makes me sad because, again, it's this societal pressure where certain things are expected or just assumed about women, like that they need help, that they, they're always the ones who, like, they don't know what they're doing. But that's totally not true. And I think that I wish that they wrote this more with Barbie as an empowering role model, someone very capable and, just like so many of the other great role models in STEM right now, right? So it just, it makes me sad to see this.
Krysta, any comments from you?
As a computer engineering student, I've never done just the design of games. I've only ever done the other side, the back end. So I just feel bad that this is so wrong. But for the most part, I feel like they just didn't think, like they didn't think to go, oh, we should write a book about women. This book about women should be written by women. I feel like this was written by men about women. I don't know. It feels kind of sad that it feels like Barbie has to rely on Steven and Brian to help her do her things or to help her design this game when I myself have never done only the design of the game, but only done the back end. It's completely untrue and paints the wrong picture of what a computer engineer even is.
And I think that's a pretty pointed comment in terms of it sounds like it was a book that was written by men, sort of about women and these perspectives. Well, I guess we have no way of knowing whether it was written by a male or female, but that would be an interesting one to find out. Because I wonder if it was actually written by a female, does that say something, even more pointed about, how women want to portray each other as opposed to men being, a little bit, well, I won't say a little bit, but in this case, pretty derogatory towards the capabilities of women. But one follow-up to this that I did want to mention is that when we talk about promoting STEM, some people, have a lot of different interpretations of what that means. Some people think promoting STEM is doing stuff like, computer engineer Barbie. Let's just put out some imagery, let's put out some tweets, some social media. Let's just develop exposure just to show girls, that they can do, these types of STEM types of work and and pursue careers in these fields and to be really successful in them, which I think is great fundamentally. The other side of it, though, I think is actually delivering the learning and the knowledge to participate and to actually, contribute to these types of STEM fields. And so I'm going to swing this one to both probably Hanna and Krysta very quickly, but Krysta, like, you are a very serious engineer, obviously. You just mentioned that you have been doing the coding behind a video game like this. You would not be the person even doing the design aspects of it. But, it's those nitty-gritty details. One conversation that we had in the past was, I think you did some research in the biomedical field over one summer, and it had to deal with powered prosthesis. Is this ringing a bell at all, Krysta?
Yes. So I was working on a biomedical project which would increase the circulation in somebody's lower leg. So this was a pneumatic system, and I was in charge of several different things to do with this. Was the replication of this pneumatic system, as well as the duplication of its circuitry, and not only duplicating it, but improving it and adding an e-stop system that would prevent our other engineer from blowing up the bladder because they didn't control it properly. So it's always good to have a system in place to make sure that, just like the system on your robot, when it starts to go haywire and hit the e-stop button, yeah, I had to make a nice fancy one of those for a system that could have potentially blown up on somebody's leg.
And so to do a project like that, you got to have the mechanical background, electrical background. There's probably some software involved there. I mean, we're talking very nitty-gritty, dare I say, kind of hardcore engineering skills, which you're not going to learn from, let's say, reading Computer Engineer Barbie. You're going to need to be exposed not just to imagery of, you know, girls who are involved with STEM, but you need to go and you need to do the meaningful activities which are going to teach you those skills. And robotics would have been one of those concrete activities that would have given you the background to do this, correct?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I got the job because I had worked with my mentor previously that year, and he had encouraged the master's student to take me on to work with her, and she gave me a chance because I said, hey, I learned MATLAB in my first year. I really like it, and I could help you do all of your data processing. And that was where it started, and it turned into a mechatronics project when I told her that that's what I wanted to do. And she was a great role model for me, and she was one of the people that really encouraged me to be involved and gave me the opportunities that I was looking for in that summer job.
Awesome. And so that brings me back to why you guys have done FIRST Robotics and the impact that it's had, you know, on your lives up until this point. Krysta, I think we've already gone in pretty great detail in terms of how it's really affected your life. Maybe Hanna, I'm going to ask this one to you. You know, in terms of FIRST Robotics, you've done both FIRST LEGO League and also the FIRST Robotics competition. Was it the best STEM activity that you've ever done? I know it's a little bit of a loaded question, but I would like for you to be honest with me. And maybe, you know, to follow up on that, you know, what would have been different if, let's say, you had never done robotics? Do you think you might be able to paint us a little bit of a picture on, you know, how your life would be different, what your pursuits would have been? Just how has robotics really impacted your life?
Well, I would say that FIRST Robotics was the best STEM activity that I have done. It was just at the right time in my life where, you know, when you're in high school, you really don't know who you are. And I think through robotics, I really found who I am as a person. Like, I was able to, you know, be the happy, like, excited person, and then who's also really interested in a lot of different things. It let me try out, you know, from electrical to mechanical, and then to programming. Like, I tried all of these things, and I found out what I liked. You know, when I first joined the team, I was thinking more to myself, well, I'd probably be better on, you know, personal relations and, like, presenting, because you know, I can present. But I'm really glad that I went the technical way and tried all of those things because, like, that's what sparked my interest. Well, specifically with FRC, like, just getting hands-on with everything, and just seeing things differently. And then if I hadn't have been on a FIRST Robotics team from my middle school to high school, I really, like, I guess I would be right now in life sciences, or, oh gosh, I can't even imagine. Like, I think at that point in time I wanted to be a doctor, so I'd probably be in life sciences right now. Yeah, and it's a really weird picture to see because I'm not that person. Like, I love solving problems and, like, looking at things analytically and thinking how, like, better ways to do things. And like, even though my program right now is so difficult, it's just, we're learning so many, like, really, really cool things. And it just brings me, like, everything right now I'm learning in first year is bringing me back to my days on the team. And, I mean, I don't know how, I'm not good with words, but I hope I did. I hope that made a little sense.
No, I think it does, and I think that's something we haven't touched a whole lot of where, you know, even regardless of whether you're a girl or a boy, having done FIRST, going into university, the level of preparation that it sets you up for in that first year, and even your subsequent years is phenomenal. It's almost better than class in a lot of different ways. Christine, I'm going to let you have the last word on this question. I know it's a bit of a loaded question, but in your opinion, has FIRST Robotics been, you know, the best STEM activity that both you and specifically your daughters could have done? And maybe some perspective on, could you imagine what things would have been like if you never did FIRST Robotics, or if your daughters never did it? What would
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a very, very powerful thing, and I can't think of anything better. And as a parent, I have to say the one thing I love about FIRST is the whole idea of core values, because to me that really sets this program apart from other activities that your kids can get involved in. And to me it's like, you know, soccer and all those things are wonderful and they're great, and I think everybody should have a nice balanced life, but I think having the core values part in this is something that's very attractive to me as a parent, because I know my kids are going to be exposed to that part of things, which is important to me. But as far as how it's changed things, certainly our whole family, there's no doubt it would be different. For me personally, I think my house would probably be a lot cleaner though if I didn't do robotics. but having said that, I enjoy having, you know, robotics parts on my dining room table on a regular basis. It's sort of part of home now for us. But for my girls, there's just no denying it. I mean, as I said before, my oldest wasn't sort of interested in this sort of direction. She started doing some programming, found quickly that she really did enjoy that, and you know, that sort of first Lego League experience led her, and I think because she was exposed young, she was more open to it and moved into FIRST Robotics competition. And then, as anybody that knows her knows, she was one of the world Dean's List winners a few years back, and that opportunity opened up further doors to her because of that experience, and basically, to make a long story short, she now works for a company that saw her and actually interviewed her and wanted her to intern when she was in grade 11 and won that award. And it's like, and the impact that that's had on her, and I think, and as a parent, dropping her off at university that first day, you know, you sort of feel a little mixed about it, sort of bittersweet moment, but it really made me feel comfortable to drop her off and have people that she didn't really know sort of come by her room and go, hey, I remember you, you're from that team. It's like, remember me? We volunteered together at that first Lego League, you know, event. And it's like, so she saw so many faces and quickly made friends that you know, that made me feel very reassured when we left her. So that was her experience. And then for my second daughter, the same sort of thing is happening. She's completely different than the older one, but her experiences have opened doors for her too. She's been very involved with our team with the CAD aspect, and that led to an opportunity for her to work at Queen's University this past summer, and that in effect opened up the opportunity for her to have a paper that she was involved with published. So I mean, to be doing something like that when you're 16 years old, I think is really, really incredible. And I think that these young ladies throughout FIRST are all experiencing wonderful things like this. And I think part of it is because they're being exposed to it young, they're being given the ability to develop a skill set that's really extraordinary, and I think we're giving them a sense of confidence as well. And part of that, I think, comes through the mentoring program specifically, because that mentoring relationship where you're getting to know, our students and mentors are getting to know each other quite well, I think that can help mentors draw out skills and interests in the students that maybe they don't see right off the bat. And I think it also gives them sort of a safe place, somebody that's supporting them and sort of walking them through step by step and keeping things very positive for them. So I think that whole relationship is really key too, and I think that's another thing that's really very special about FIRST, that mentoring relationship.
Very nice, Christine. And one thing I just wanted to highlight in terms of what you said was the extraordinary experiences that, you know, your daughters have had, and Krysta and Hanna being with us here, you've had some extraordinary ones as well. I also just want to comment how they're not really that extraordinary at the same time, because these are almost very typical experiences that most girls are getting out of these programs just by being a part of it. And so there are girls who are going through our programs every day, you know, every single year, who are having the exact same types of experiences, just like your daughters and Hanna and Krysta are having. They're not super exceptional. Just be a part of the program, get involved, and all this stuff is probably going to happen to you, you know? And having said that, I know I'm running a little bit over on time, but now that we've told you about the program, what the impact that it's had on all these people's lives, and these girls in particular, we're just going to spend a few moments on, well, if you're now convinced and you want to start a team, you want to get involved, maybe you have a daughter who you want to try and bring into the program and get exposed to this whole robotics competition business. How do you do that? Well, we have 3 different programs available here in Ontario. There's a few more available to you if you happen to live in the States and some other areas, but if you are ages 6 to 10, there's a program called the FIRST Lego League Junior available to you, and this is very, very affordable. The registration cost is only $75 US. You do have to buy a kit of parts, which are based on Lego, but they're pretty inexpensive, and a team consists of 2 to 6 students. A lot of schools will have FIRST Lego League Junior teams out of them, but even if your school doesn't have one and you just have a group of friends where you want to get together and start your own team and literally run it out of your living room or your basement, you can absolutely do so. And we put the link here on the slides, and I'll make sure that it gets included in our YouTube archive of this webinar if you'd like to take a look at that. And then if you are ages 9 to 14, you move up to the next FIRST program, which is called the FIRST Lego League, no junior in this case. The teams get a little bit larger with up to a maximum of 10 students. The cost to register is about $225 US, but it's a much larger scale, a little bit more competitive, where you're building robots to do challenges on a 4x8 wooden table. But then after you hit the age of 14 and you move into the high school ages, this is now with the larger robots, the FIRST Robotics competition. And for this, you want to try and assemble a team of at least 10 students. So they get relatively large. I've seen teams with up to 100 students on them. It's a little bit more resource intense at $7,500, and that'll enter you into 2 competitions. But with that cost, you will get a kit of parts with materials worth probably on the order of about $15,000. And I've included a link here as well. Most teams are associated with a school. Excuse me. But if you're certainly interested in that, you can certainly take a look. But maybe starting a team may not be your cup of tea. There are other ways in which you can get involved as well. For instance, if you're just a parent, and maybe you don't have kids who are quite that age, but you're intrigued in this whole process, you can actually find an existing team. And as Christine mentioned, the mentoring aspect is a huge part of this program, where teams are constantly looking for adults, whether you're someone in the tech business or even if you're not. Adult volunteers to be able to help mentor the students on the team is a huge part of what these robotics programs are all about, and what makes it special. And so if you'd like to try and find an existing team near you, you can click on this link, and there's a nice little search engine. It'll show you a map of all the teams that are nearby you, and there's some contact information which you can reach out to them to see if you would like to be involved. And last but not least, we do have robotics competitions all throughout the world, in fact. But if you're willing to give up just a weekend or a few days to be able to volunteer at these competitions, we'll take people with no experience. And if you want a very, very simple volunteer job just to help us do some crowd control or reset the field by putting the robotics parts back into the right spots, you can do that. If you want to be more involved, that mentorship aspect comes into play here. We're always looking for judges. So if you are kind of established in the tech community, and particularly if you're a female, we are definitely looking for female judges who will interview and work with our students to be able to do awards presentations, and you'll be able to judge a team on their business plan, on their robots, on how they're promoting girls in STEM as a result. And it's a very, very valuable and fulfilling experience to be able to work with the students at that level, even as a volunteer at an event. If you're interested in an opportunity there, you can click on this website, and it just asks you to register, put in some of your personal information, and it'll show you the events happening in your area and the types of different volunteer roles that you can serve. But that's a great way to get involved as well. And last but not least, just to wrap up our webinar, I just wanted to bring to your attention a really cool initiative that FIRST Robotics Canada has initiated. This webinar is all part of a bigger piece of the puzzle, where I think we're beginning to recognize just how powerful of a tool, an activity, FIRST Robotics really is in promoting STEM to girls. You know, across the board with our panelists, they've all said that this is probably the best activity that they've been able to be exposed to or expose their children to. And we're looking for ways to get the word out and to promote STEM through our robotics competition, and to do it in the right way, not in the computer engineer Barbie way, but in very meaningful, ways which are going to have a direct impact to our community. And so we actually have assembled an executive advisory council with some very prominent female and actually male members as well, who have a vested interest in trying to make this happen, putting our heads together, putting our resources together to come up with ideas and different initiatives to try and further this as much as we possibly can. But I wanted to thank, first of all of our panelists for being with us tonight. We've gone a little bit over, and so I'm actually going to officially end the webinar. And if you guys are able or willing to stick around, if there happen to be any questions afterwards, we can certainly address them. But thanks very much once again, Christine, Krysta, Hanna, for being with us this evening. We really appreciate it, and have yourselves a great night.
Just 1 second, Sean, before we go.
Yes.
We have one of our panelists, Christine, wanted us to mention that there are lots of non-tech aspects of FIRST that girls might be interested in as a way to expose them to STEM, and then find out that maybe there are other things like coding and building that interest them as well.
100%. Thank you very much, Paul, for adding that little tidbit. 100%. The non-tech aspects of FIRST are arguably just as important, and even more important, in many ways. So thanks very much. All right, everyone, have yourselves a great evening, and hopefully you can join us next week for our webinar, where we'll be talking about rookie tips for teams which are just getting off the ground, and pre-season startup activities. So whether you're a rookie or a veteran, if you're looking for things to do during this fall off-season, just before kickoff, some high-value activities to really prepare you for the upcoming season, you're definitely going to want to tune in for that one. Take care, everyone, and have yourselves a great night.